I'm best in class, no doubt at all. Watch me.
So Leon, today we're joined by Luke Nihill. Thanks for your time, Luke.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Co-founder, MD of Qurated, executive research company, which we'll obviously dig into a lot more in a few moments. Very interesting story through sort of 10, 11 years old now, and then you manage a buyout, which is a really interesting conversation. We'll have the trials and tribulations of that.
Of course.
And then you've got your own podcast, which I'm going to remember as Action, Impact, Growth.
There we go.
Speaking to C-suite leaders, around strategic leadership, culture, etc. Certainly a good lead. What occurred to me was Leon in his rugby days was always getting feedback after sessions and games. Obviously a podcast host yourself. We await feedback at the end of this podcast from ourselves.
Always, what can we do better? How do we improve it?
Yeah. Of course. So thanks for your time. So kick off. Tell us your story.
Of course. So my story, wow, that's a
big question.
Big bold place to start. So look, I think I'll focus on the kind of the Qurated years, which is the business that I founded in 2016. Because pre that, I had a couple of professional roles. I worked in a couple of different recruitment businesses. One was a large kind of multinational business, and I always felt like a bit of a number in that business. But it was a good kind of starting point, right? I met some really good friends there. I met my wife there. It was a good social scene. Learned the very basics of the job, and the job was recruitment. And then I left that organisation and I joined a much smaller firm. So that was a conscious choice for me at that moment. So I was 3 years into my career. I went into a 6-person firm that had ambitions to scale. And I thought, actually, I can take my kind of raw base level knowledge and understanding of what to do in this job, apply it into an environment that's going to look at fast growth, that's going to really teach me how to do things properly and hopefully help me grow as a person. So that actually paid off. That was a gamble that really paid off. And then 3 years down the line from there, my now wife, my fiance at the time, we were talking to her boss. So we both left the first company, went our separate ways. She joined a larger organisation. I joined a smaller organisation. 3 years into that journey, her boss at the time actually turned around to us and said, look, you two, if you would be up for starting something yourselves, clearly you've got a bit of a knack for this. I can take the risk off the table. I'll back you. I'll put some cash in, and then you can go from there, and you can have your own thing. And we weren't thinking about it at that point, but when someone approaches you with that type of offer, it's kind of hard to say no. So we thought about it a little bit, and then we jumped in head first, naively in hindsight. And then the kind of Qurated story started there.
What about why recruitment to start off with? Why did you, when you were, so you go to university, I know you came from university, but...
I did not go to university. Why recruitment? I think candidly, there was an opportunity to earn money. The industry valued people's skills.
Yeah.
I always felt like I was good with people. It was a sales role, effectively. That always felt like a good starting point for me. And I think, I've interviewed thousands of recruiters over the last 20 years, and I think most of them say they fell into the industry, and that's probably the same thing for me, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I'm sure in school people are filling out their career application, recruiter. Yeah. Same with my industry, respectfully.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that journey then, and building the business, how did that start out? And as an entrepreneur, then and if you've got backing, there's obviously a lot of pressure in whether it's just placed on yourself rather than your investor. How was that initially?
Well, I think when I look back, it kind of, we like to take risks. Both Amber and I, my wife and I, we like to take risks. So in that year, it was 2016, so 10 years ago, we got married in May, at the end of May. So we went off to Ibiza for our wedding. We came back. I handed in my notice. So I handed in my notice in June in my current organisation. Had a 4-week notice. They put me on gardening leave. Said I was going to start up my own thing. And then we went and did our honeymoon in the US. Whilst we were in the US, we created the brand, the logo, the kind of the first viewpoint of
on your honeymoon.
On our honeymoon.
How good is that?
It's a really funny story, actually. We spent 5 days at Burning Man Festival in the desert in Nevada, and at Burning Man Festival we were suspended about 10 foot in the air on a sofa. And that's when we came up with the name Qurated Network, and also put the initial logo together with a couple of people around us. And we were like, what does this look like? And they're like, yeah, great. So that is literally the foundation of the business. That story never gets told very much. But so then we started the business and officially founded and was formed in September. So that year we got married, and then we started the business together like a few months later, which was obviously a bold move when I look back. But we always had this viewpoint that there was an underserved part of the industry, which was there was a lot of big executive recruitment firms out there that focused on CFO roles, COO roles, CEO roles, like that side of the C-suite. There was no one really focused on technology. Technology at that point didn't generally sit at the executive level, didn't really have a board role in most organizations, but we could see that this change was coming. So we thought, well, if we create a business that sits at the intersection of industry and technology, and we focus on the leaders that operate within that space, then actually we could have a nice niche for ourselves. And it was always looking at technically savvy business leaders or business savvy technology leaders. That was our sweet spot. And that actually paid off really well, because there wasn't that many firms operating in that space at that point. And we kind of really quickly got traction there. So that's where we started.
And do you, part of what you offer, does it broaden out to supporting the business strategically and project-wise, rather than here's Jim, I'll leave you alone?
You've hit the nail on the head. Interestingly, I think we always had this vision that we wanted to be a strategic partner. As a recruitment partner, often you are in the most strategic conversations, right? Because you're in the conversation where the business is saying, we've got this strategy, we want to do this thing, right? Generally, our clients are big, large corporations, generally global businesses. They have a business strategy. One of the critical aspects of them achieving that objective is they need the right leadership in place. So we always felt like we were privy to like real insights around what is it that this business is trying to do and how are they going to get there. And then we had to play a key role in actually providing that capability to them. So it always felt a bit weird to walk away from the conversation at the point when you've put someone into that leadership role, because actually you've got all of the insights at that point around the strategy, you've got the trust and the relationship with the individual that's going in to execute on this plan. So we always had this viewpoint that we could do a lot more, but it took us a long while to actually realize that. We're doing that now. It actually, pre-MBO, we just didn't have the opportunity to see that. There's too much pressure there.
It's a big value, isn't it? It's almost, in some ways, you're offering it's an outsider view, isn't it? Kind of, you could argue non-exec, kind of like this from the outside. This is what we're seeing. This is what we're hearing around the table. These are it's a value add for that client, isn't it?
For sure. And you get a lot of insights that other organisations do not have, right? Because you get the strategic insights that a consulting firm might have. You also have the raw talent insights that only a recruitment consultancy or a search firm has, right? The combination of those two things, I think, is really powerful. Most businesses miss that in our field.
I think what you do is sort of removes it from being transactional relationship. You're not like just CV shuffling and just filling a post.
Yeah.
You're actually there for the long haul, which it sounds like makes you really attractive to your clients for the long journey.
Exactly that. Yeah. So if you think about the process of going through a recruitment process as a candidate for an executive level role, this is a big decision that you're going to make, right? And I think you need to trust the person that's kind of brokering that for you and guiding you through that process. And it's our job to build that trust, which, we do well. So by the time that person lands, A, like I say, their objectives, the mandate that they're coming in to deliver. B, they know you and you know them. So it's very easy from that point to then start servicing them more broadly, and you become really sticky.
Does that make it harder to scale? Like to have that people, if you're people centric and building those relationships, that takes time, right? That takes a lot, and also investment of people time, but also over tenure, if you like. So does that restrict you from scaling quickly?
It definitely does, yeah. We've seen that. I think the concept really resonates with people, and they understand it straight away. And I've been reflecting on this recently, actually. I think it's easy to explain what we do to potential candidates for the business. It's actually easier than it is to explain it to clients, even, because they still see recruitment as one thing and consulting and strategic guidance and advice as another thing, right? And when you say, well, we actually do both, often you lose the room, even just by saying it, because they almost think you're overselling yourself, whereas that is the reality. So actually, where we are getting some really good wins now is going out into the consulting firms and saying, look, we've got this recruitment platform. This is what we've built over the last 10 years. here's some proof points that we can actually provide the strategic advice and be a bit more end to end as well. What we need is additional capability to come in and help us scale this.
We'll find that.
And that's actually really working well. So people are really buying into that story, especially the consultants, because they see the restriction from their current role around they don't get those talent insights.
Yeah.
And being able to combine those two things is invaluable for them.
Before we talk, I know 21, you completed a management buyout. Before we go back, just to talk about that placement side of thing, and thinking a conversation we were having yesterday, Leon, around culture in clubs, in sport, and you're obviously bringing outsiders into an environment.
Yeah.
And obviously the importance of, we were talking yesterday about coaches and blending in with the existing culture that's within a business. Obviously they're, I guess, again, strategic, part of the strategic conversations, and I guess really important, because the last thing you need is loose cannon's the wrong word, but someone that doesn't fit the culture piece. So again, spending that time with C-suite to understanding that culture, and I presume you see times when you're just like, their culture fit isn't right. They might be able to do the job, but
Maverick. Yeah, it's in the sport world, the Maverick. Sometimes it's good to get the Maverick in, but sometimes the Maverick can be the disruptor.
When is it good to? That's a really interesting point. See, I agree. And actually, we've probably had, in our own business, we've probably had one example of where Maverick has really taken us forward. They only took us to a point though.
Yeah.
And then actually, naturally, it was their time to leave the organisation, right? But I think that's really hard to do, isn't it? Because ultimately, you're bringing in a disruptor.
yeah, it's risk, isn't it? Risk. What's the potential upside?
Yeah.
Before causing problems.
I love the concept though. I have to say, we actually find it a lot easier to recruit for our clients and select people for our clients objectively, to assess them and say, yes, they're a cultural fit. No, they're not. This is the reason that they will absolutely rocket ship your organisation versus not. Versus our own business, we find it a lot more difficult for our own business.
Well, I think any business owner, there's just biases in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
As someone objective outside of your business, you can be more. You can look at this candidate, they'll be looking at the skill set going, absolutely perfect, but as objectively, you haven't got any biases going, well, but it doesn't tick box B and C, does it? So it's that objectiveness.
It's really funny. So I think over the last 10 years, probably the biggest rub that Amber and I have had as the two co-founders and directors of the business, it comes from talent. So I think I have a tendency to always want to see the best in people and always look at the bright side, whereas Amber's a bit more of a realist, and she's almost like glass. You have to prove it to her first before you earn her trust, right? And it's almost like glass half empty, which actually those two combining perspectives are really, really helpful, although it is challenging because you do have that challenge, right? Which you kind of want.
You need that,
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's move on. 2021 management buyout. What kind of changed the focus there? Why that? Walk us through that fascinating story.
Yes. So we were a little bit stuck before the management buyout. I think the business that we wanted to build, the strategic business that was a strategic partner to our clients, wasn't the business that we had. There was a lot of pressure because we were investor backed to produce numbers every single month, and the numbers were what we knew, what was comfortable, right? So the business that they knew worked was the business that we were doing, and that wasn't necessarily the business that we wanted to do. So then COVID came along, and we saw that as an opportunity because obviously it massively impacted our profits and therefore reduced the value of our business. Also, our investors had a broader portfolio, so they were in a similar situation. So we actually saw the opportunity to present them with an offer to buy them out. And that was a lengthy negotiation that taught both Amber and I an enormous amount. And I think when I look back at it, one of the real kind of key takeaways for me was actually we had to lose the negotiation to get out of the investor relationship. So they got 8 times their initial investment in the middle of COVID, which was, unheard of for a business that's kind of 4 years old and technically on its knees at that point, because all the revenues had taken a massive hit in COVID. But we had to lose that negotiation. And at the time, I remember I had that mindset of, it doesn't matter about winning this. We don't need to come out of this feeling like we've won and that we've got an amazing deal, because actually this is the rest of our lives that we're talking about. So as long as we come out of it with what we want, which is 100% ownership of the business, and we can still grow it from where we end up, that's a good result.
So you must have had extreme confidence in what, you're talking about COVID time, what the horizon is. Like we talk about horizon scale looking forward. You and Emma must have had something in your mind. You say, right, just by getting out, give us that freedom to be able to take it at pace to where you want to get to. So
I wish it was that. I wish it was. I think it's probably naivety more than anything else, or like naive confidence. But yeah, look, we always backed ourselves, right? Which is why we were doing what we were doing in the first place. Realised that one of those two things wasn't going to happen. We were either going to get a reasonably not good deal and get out of it, or we weren't going to get out.
But you prioritize getting out, though, right? It sounds like that was the key for you is let's get out, then we'll make it work.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
I mean, it would seem from the outside as well. There's other ways that could have been less honourable, which was leave, sell. So again, morally, was it that we have to do it the right way as well? I'm sure it was.
It was. We were also restricted. We had restrictive covenants that would have made it very difficult to leave, and that's the reality. So that was a bit of a moment of realization for us when we looked at the shareholders agreement at the very start of the negotiations.
Yeah.
We didn't really have an alternative. The two options were bad deal and out, or no deal and stay in.
And interestingly, during that, let's call it a 6-year journey. See, I guess with your co-investors, the investors, you've kind of aligned in your vision. How quickly did it start, let's say, merging away, and how cognizant were you both? Did it go on for a few years, or were you quite decisive going, oh, we are drifting left here and they're drifting right?
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't think we did that homework up front enough. They saw us as a good investment opportunity because in our game, you're cash generative. If you can bill well and you can do the business, then actually you don't really need that much support, and you can grow a reasonably sized business. I'm talking like a couple of million that generates a decent profit. And I think they were very comfortable with that. We hadn't necessarily had that conversation up front to say, where do we really want to take this over a 10-year period, say? And to be honest with you, I don't think we really knew either. It wasn't until we got into it, and probably in reality, when kids started to come into the scene, and once we started to, mature ourselves and think about our own lives and where we wanted to be, that's really where the thinking started to come in around, is this the business that we want in the future? Can we see ourselves being passionate about this for the next 20 years, right? And that's when the answer was probably not.
Yeah. And so then as co-owners, you try and bring a family up?
Yeah.
Fairly busy?
Yeah, fairly busy. We had our first in 2019, so pre-COVID, and then our second one came along in 2021. So that whole period, the MBO negotiations started in 2020. So at that point, my daughter was like 9 months old. Amber was kind of still like coming back from maternity. So it was a very intense period, and quite scary at the beginning, right? As it was for everybody.
Yeah. So looking at the future of your business, you've got New York offices now, as well as based here in London. Again, just if you say now and looking 10 years in the future, what do you see for your business?
Growth is the name of the game, really. So I think there's a couple of things that need to happen now. First of all, we need to build the right team. We've got a fantastic team. I think going back to 2021, when we completed the MBO, we'd obviously gone all in on this financially, and we didn't really have the story to attract the right people. And obviously we know the importance of storytelling. At that point in time, we were effectively a brand new business that had just come out of this MBO, right? So we had to be creative around how do we build the team? How do we attract the right people, buy into the vision, that have the right kind of cultural fit? So we started by hiring graduates, and we were really, really selective. I think at one point we talked internally about the fact that our recruitment stats were probably higher than Google in terms of the ratio of people that applied versus actually made it into the door. So we were super selective because we knew exactly what sort of person we wanted. And we hired the first two, I think it was, must have been maybe like early 2022. They're both still with the business. One of them we moved out to New York in 2024, and he's absolutely flying. And the other guy, he's in our London office taking a more senior role now. Both of them started as fresh graduates. So we kind of looked at that and thought, actually, there's something in this that could really, really work. So we replicated that over and over. And the pitch at the time was, if you're coming into the business, you're always going to have people that are 3 or 6 months ahead of you that have come in at the same level that you can look to and say, right, I want to catch them.
That's your path.
That's your path. But then also, if you're that 3 or 6 months ahead, you've always got people behind you that are nipping at your heels, going, right, I'm trying to catch up. And it creates a really nice, healthy competition, but also a really collaborative environment, because they all had each other's backs, because that's one of the things that we assess for when we're recruiting people. So that's the kind of foundation of the business. Yeah. Trying to create the sports team.
As I say, it sounds very sporty, that team, that collaboration, not a competition piece, especially in the world of recruitment where it can be a bit backstabby. People are trying to climb to the top to get their numbers in. It's quite a brutal space to be in. Where was New York on the plan then? So when you started, was it always have a vision of let's grow our London office or our UK place with a view to expanding to the New York? Or how did that come about?
Yeah, it was actually. I remember even pre the MBO, I remember presenting a slide in one of our annual kickoffs to say, look, this is the vision that we've got for the business, because it's not enormously difficult to get a recruitment office off the ground, as long as you've got people that can go and connect and engage and network, and then you've got people that really understand how to assess talent. I think you can relatively easily get to a point where you are, winning business and generating revenue. So we thought one of the quickest ways to actually build this thing would be to replicate what we're doing and then open other offices and have the same culture and the same approach. So it was always part of the plan, for sure. But it felt like a distant dream at that point, I think. Nice. And where next? So
another office.
New York right now. Texas, we've got 5 people there currently who are employed by the firm. So I think we will grow those 2 bases out. So interestingly, this year we've got baby number 3 coming along in May.
Nice.
And Amber and I are moving in July to Connecticut in just outside of New York. So again, it's another big year where we're taking all the risk again, but that is to go and really drive the New York office growth and take it from being a group of individuals who are doing really, really well to actually an office that's going to grow and build and be hopefully central to the US growth strategy.
Yeah.
And obviously taking the kids that they're already here with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Some challenge that is.
The new headquarters.
One of the things I picked up off the website is growth mindset, which I guess is part of something you work with clients. But for you personally, you obviously part of you when you went on Leon's course, and the story Leon tells me, you were looking to push and develop yourself constantly. So talk a bit about your drive to sort of put yourself in uncomfortable situations constantly and why you do that.
Yeah, do you know what? I think I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder from not going to university, to be quite candid. I always feel like I missed out on a learning opportunity by not doing that. I jumped into work and tried to carve out a career as early as possible, right? So that's one of the things that drives me to stay. And also there's just this underlying thing where if you're going to do something, you want to do it well, right? And I always am very, very aware of my own capability gaps. So I've invested in coaches now for the last 10 years, and that's been hugely helpful. But yeah, that's probably where it comes from. It's the underlying thing that you want to be the best at what you do, but also there's a bit of a chip on my shoulder from not having that kind of raw learning experience of university.
Why did you not go to uni? What was it? Was it quite a binary choice, yes or no, or was it?
It probably was a binary choice, yeah. I think my brother went to university, but not all of my family had been to university previously. It wasn't like an expectation that everybody goes to university, right? It's actually quite unusual that my brother went to university. So I think I probably followed more the standard path for my family. But personally, I just wanted to get out and work.
Yeah,
I think that was the thing.
I remember when we were introduced by Dean.
Yes.
I was talking to Dean, who is I don't know if he's your coach or mentor or one of your colleagues.
He's a coach, yeah.
Coach, yeah. And he was saying, I've got this guy, super driven. And he said, I'm not going to tell you too much about him, but you'll like him, you'll get on. And he linked us together. And I could see just the way that you talk in the language that, as I say, like, if I didn't know, I'd assumed you'd have played rugby, like my sport, because, how to become better, how do I bring the team with me? It's all not about me, it's about the team. And I totally understood what he meant by having that first conversation about how you drive and how successful you are and how you push yourself in uncomfortable areas, which we certainly helped you do that.
Yeah, definitely. The best course really did. And I think Dean actually said this to me a while ago, and it really stuck with me. And that is that when you're building a business or a team, you don't want a family. You know, everybody talks about a family environment. It shouldn't be a family environment. It should be a sports team environment, right? Where you can hold yourselves to a high standard. You've got each other's backs. You're absolutely on the same page. You all want the same outcome, but you also push each other to be better every single day. And you won't stand for people that aren't driving those standards, right? That's the type of environment that I want to be in. And if I was working in a business, that's exactly what I'd want around me. I'd want people that are going to make me better.
Yeah.
Not be comfortable with me not doing a very good job. Who wants that?
Yeah.
A lot of people, but I agree. Yeah, a lot of people. So let's talk about the podcast a little bit. Obviously, you're meeting senior leaders on there, and again, I guess observationally, it's again meeting high performers and that opportunity, I suppose, in many ways to pick their brains, learn from them as well. So, what's that experience been like?
It's been amazing, actually. And to be honest with you, the whole idea of the pod came about because I had invested a lot of personal cash into coaching, right? I saw that as a route to kind of fast track me in my career, and it worked really well. And then at the same time, I spent all day, every day in my job talking to people about how they did what they did, how they built their teams, how they developed people. So I kind of had this view that actually a lot of those insights that I'm getting will be really valuable to people. And I learn a lot from it myself as well. And I'd constantly find myself taking things from these conversations and applying it in my day to day. So the idea of the podcast initially was, well, why can't I get some of these conversations on camera, take some of these insights, turn it into content for other people that are hugely ambitious, that want to develop themselves? And that's where the idea came from.
Yeah, okay. And have you had some sort of key things you've learned from maybe some guests that have spring to mind?
Definitely. So actually, yes, I take something from every single episode, if I'm honest with you. But the recent episode I've just released is with a guy called Mike Camerling. He's the CEO of a business now. They're private equity backed, and he pulled that business out of a big corporate. So it's a big transformation, basically. That's what he did. At the same time, he stepped up into the CEO role. And I think one of the things that I took away from that, and I've thought about it a lot since, is like 3 Ps. He didn't talk about it as 3 Ps, but when you think about his story, there's a lot of like positivity. He's really passionate and really positive about what he does. He always had a lot of passion for the business that he was building. And then there's persistence. Like nothing came easy to him. He had to really kind of break through walls and keep going and stuff. And then at the same time, on the other end of it, there's a lot of patience. So he's like super positive, super passionate, which probably drives a little bit of impatience in a lot of people, right? But at the same time, he realized it wasn't going to happen overnight. So he had to be super patient. And I thought there's such a lesson in that for anyone that's either building something or in a transformation in their business, right? You kind of have to have all of those 3 things, which is really difficult, I think.
Do you?
I think I'm probably more positive than patient, if I'm honest. I find, but it's really interesting. I don't know if this resonates for you in sport as well. I find that I'm positive to the point that I believe things are going to happen. And when they don't, I actually look at myself more than I look at anyone else. And I don't know whether that, as a leader, I don't know whether that's always the healthiest thing, because you often then don't give other people the opportunity to learn as much as you put your pressure on yourself to learn and progress, right?
Yeah, so I can resonate with that. Absolutely. You always look at so to the window and mirror analogy when things are going great.
Yeah.
You look out the window at your team when it's not going great. You look in the mirror, look at yourself first before you go through. I think one of the things that I've learned from my sporting background is shouldering that responsibility is great. You know, accountability is huge. You mentioned it earlier on about it's not a family, it's a team, and everyone needs to be accountable for their action and everything else. But sharing that with people, if you give people the opportunity to identify where things have gone wrong in high-performing environments, people usually will come forward and say, I could have done this better. Whereas before, I learned that from doing some work with Red Arrows, actually, where they would only talk when they felt they could add more value. And I'd listen to them talk. They just raised the bar on the whole accountability piece, where stuff which nobody else may not have been aware of. Yeah. Somebody would come and say, well, actually, you're saying that, Luke, but if I'd have done this bit over here, that would have made your job a little bit easier. I'm thinking, that's like a game changer. And hear other people at that level being open, and it comes out that trust and that mindset.
It's a difficult thing to do, though, isn't it? I've found it really. I don't think I've nailed it in a team environment yet. I think everybody's individually accountable, but I don't see that. I think it's really difficult to get people to take accountability as a team. I think most people would look out when things are going badly.
Yeah.
in reality, right?
I struggled with that when I left the sporting world and joined the real world.
Yeah.
Because in the sporting world,
The real world.
the real world, I've got a proper job. But in the sporting world, there's no hiding place, right? There's no finger pointing. You have to own. If you don't own your mistakes, and somebody else has to point them out to you, that's a real no-no. So there's a reward in being forward, being on the front foot to say, look, this is what I did. This is the reason I did it. If I had that same opportunity again, I may or may not do the reason. But by coming forward and saying that, rather than somebody else saying, what were you doing there? If someone said that to you, you've sort of failed. In a sporting environment, you need to be on the front foot. Absolutely different in the real world. But trying to build that team where it doesn't matter who you are, and again, it comes down to the leader, knowing that you're not perfect to make mistakes, but no matter who you are, what you do, you're allowed to make mistakes. Just come forward, just own them.
Yeah.
Own the mistakes and just don't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good lesson, isn't it? Don't make the same mistake twice. I think that's something you can control too, right? Because the first time you make a mistake, often it's out of naivety or not knowing, or you don't know what you don't know, right?
Or not pushing.
Or not pushing.
Because you can get comfortable. And one of the things, again, the difference between sport and business is if you're not making mistakes, how hard are you pushing? You want to be pushed to the point where you've made that mistake, but you learn from that mistake.
Yeah.
And again, in sport, it's easy to do because you can push and you go, oh, we won't do that again.
Yeah.
But there might be bigger consequences in sport than in business.
In business, yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
A book I would recommend, I don't know whether either of you read it, is by Jacko Willink. It's called Extreme Ownership. He's a former Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
But he talks about it's the same with sport, where certainly as the leader, he ultimately accountability to something's breaking down further down the chain. It's because he hasn't trained them properly, haven't given the right instructions. And that ownership then builds that trust, which then builds the opportunity to provide constructive feedback, should we say? Taken the right way.
And do you know, one of the things that I've talked about since we started the business, we actually had a sales coach come in and work with our sales team, and he introduced the concept of if you look after the inputs, the outputs take care of themselves. And that really resonated with me in that moment. You know, often you hear these things and it takes a little while and then you go, right, that's where I can apply that. That hit me straight away. And I started to talk about it. And I still talk about it now. It's almost to the point where it's a bit tongue in cheek because everyone else they're like, if you look after the input. But you see this all the time, right? And we've just had a lad in our office, a guy called John Scott. He's just done his first marathon, right? And he trained like no one else I've ever seen. He just committed to it. He was doing 80 kilometers a week, every week. He had a goal. He wanted to get close to 3 hours, and he really committed to the training. That's looking after the inputs, right? He ate properly. He didn't drink for like 2 months beforehand, and he absolutely nailed it. He did the marathon in 2 hours 57 in his first marathon, right? So I kind of shone a light on that with the team. It's like, that's what I mean by if you look after the inputs, the outputs take care of themselves. It's like you train hard and you fight easy, right? It's the same concept.
Brilliant. I love it. I love all the analogy you're saying there. It's definitely from a sporting, what you've developed is definitely from a sporting grounding.
For sure.
And I think when we interview people here and have these conversations, I always try and look to see how have they got to the top? Like how have they developed themselves? What do they invest in CPD? You've already said yourself, you highly value the coaching.
Yeah.
And you're interviewing lots of senior leaders as well, so you're picking up little bits as well. Do you do what other stuff do you do? Do you read much? Do you listen to books?
I do. I try to read every single day, and I try to do between 10 and 20 pages a day, and it's generally
looking at the inputs.
Yeah. Non-fiction business that most people find really boring, but I absolutely love, and I get a lot from that, right? And basically, how that actually manifests for me as a leader is I just develop a load of puns that then I go and talk to people about and try and be as repetitive as possible so it sticks with them, right? And we do a Wednesday workshop, which has been really, I think it's been really good actually. We're at a point now where it's probably lost a bit of its direction, as these things often do, but the whole idea of the Wednesday workshop is every single Wednesday morning for an hour, we get the team together and we do a kind of a learning-based workshop. And it's normally an exercise, but I often base those things on things that I've learned out of books. And then I use kind of AI and other tools to then say, how do I take this from a concept that I now understand to an exercise that I can roll out to a team of people? And that's always really good fun. So it's taking those learnings, but then constantly I'm always thinking about how can I apply this, you know?
What like that. So obviously there's an element of vulnerability about doing that. Do you think that's important in what you do and in your business and how you operate?
I think it's an innate thing in me, actually. I get this feedback a lot, but it's a double-edged sword, because it's good because you get lots of buy-in, right? And you develop lots of trust. It's probably not so good in moments where people just need you to be a really strong leader, because you're kind of always going, well, this is what we can do better, right? And sometimes that doesn't work as well. Sometimes people need to look at you as a leader and see like absolute 100%, 100% conviction on this is what we're doing and this is the way we're going. And I do sometimes find that balance a little bit tricky, I must admit.
Okay, interesting.
But it's interesting. So again, Amber and I were talking about this year, so if I look at our life today, we've got 2 kids, a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. We've got a very established business in the UK, which is growing. It's kind of growing under its own steam. And when we want to grow that faster by bringing in the right talent, everything's very exciting on a personal level. Everything's very comfortable. And then all of a sudden, we're going to throw this grenade in, take ourselves and our kids all the way across the Atlantic to Connecticut to go and almost start something new again, and really cross our fingers and hope that nothing falls apart in the meantime, right? And that's, I think, something that we like to do, funnily enough, and we have reflected on this because it's a big risk for us personally, but we've taken these risks a few times now, and every time they've paid off. So I almost think that you shouldn't be afraid of the failure, because even if we make the move and maybe we don't achieve the growth that we want to achieve, maybe we need to make some changes that we didn't actually foresee or didn't plan for, that's fine, right? It doesn't mean it's failure. It just means that actually things haven't quite gone to the plan, but nothing ever goes to plan, right?
Yeah, again, I guess I'd say that's the same in sport, isn't it? Where
you've got to adapt, be agile. You never know. Connecticut may lead to somewhere else, right? You've got to be there to
exactly.
You've got to be in the room when it happens.
Was it Mike Tyson said that everyone's got a plan until you walk in the ring and get punched in the face?
Very true. So the last question I have, just around, I'm interested. I'll call you, and I'm sure you're happy to be called younger.
Yeah.
One of my sort of experiences through certainly over the last 5 years is like stakeholder communication. So I guess like in business, running your own business, it's coming from every direction, from clients to customers to your staff to investors as well. How's that journey been for you? Because that's something that obviously takes up so much time, and not in a bad way, but in a trying to drive rev here. Well,
yeah, that's tough, isn't it? I think if you're in a small business, it's a constant challenge. I always admire the people that can just be laser focused around their top priorities. I have not nailed that bit. That's a really difficult thing to do, I think. But so for me, I do have systems and things that I try to hold myself to account to on a kind of daily and weekly basis, and it's mainly around activity. Because again, I know that if I do the activity, those are the inputs that then take care of the outputs.
So like that Workshop Wednesday might be one of those inputs.
Exactly that, yeah. And I have kind of a rule around how I try to manage my inbox. I don't always do it as well as I should, but how I try to get back to people within a specific time frame. In our game, I think actually, I had an example of this yesterday. So we had a client reach out to us and say, you guys, you've kind of stuck at the task, right? Every time I need to talk to you about something, you're always there. You're always providing good insights. You've been consistent in your communication, where others may have been patchy because they've had a conversation, they've promised the world, and then they haven't followed up and they haven't done what they said they're going to do. I think for us, actually doing that consistent communication and doing what you say you're going to do, it enables you to really build something. So that's what I hold as the number one priority, just making sure that I'm constantly communicative, constantly doing what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah, and then I guess if you lead by example, your team will build on the same basis.
Yeah, and to be honest, I learn from them as well, right? Constantly, even the younger guys in the team, they do it really well, partly because they've got less priorities, but then you see the outcomes off the back of it and you're like, that's what I need to be focused on. Yeah. All of this other stuff is kind of noise, right? That's the thing that really matters, because that's what drives the business.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm keen. I'm going to put you on the spot now, because I'm keen to dive a little bit deeper. Just from my last questions around the types of books that you read or listen to. I'm a big audio book listener, so I'm traveling quite a lot. So I'm treated. If you were to make a recommendation of a book, so I'm in the same spheres of self-development business books. So what's the biggest one that's given you the biggest impact? You say?
Good's great, I think. Yeah, I mean, you've probably got that. Yeah, you've probably got that a lot of times. But we literally talk about specific things from that book all the time, like get the right people on the bus and set the direction afterwards. I'm always fascinated by the level 5 leadership concept. Like and that actually gives me a lot of confidence in my own leadership style, because for me, the level 5 leader is someone that is not about themselves. They're all about the team, right? And actually they drive performance through the team, and that creates longevity and enduring capabilities. And I love that concept. So if I was to name one, it would be that. There's another one, never split the difference,
Nice.
Which at other end of the spectrum, but again, we use a lot of the lessons from that in terms of communication style. So be question led, be curious, seek to understand, not to be understood. And I think some of the way that book's written, where it's like anecdotal and then boom, here's the lesson for you. I love that.
Yeah.
That works for me anyway.
Good recommendation. I've read both of those. That means I'm on the right page. Which is good.
Well, they're classics, aren't they? I suppose.
Let's add them to my to-do list after your book, Lee. Cool. Luke, appreciate your time. Really insightful conversation. Congratulations on your success, and good luck with I love the risk taken as well, because it's easier to probably not take the risks. Is the honest, not go to America, and so fair play for carrying on.
Thank you, baby number 3 as well.
I know, yeah,
another risk. Yeah.
It's a big year, but looking forward to it.
It'll be awesome.
Embracing it. Thanks, guys. Thank you
for
very
your
much.
time.
I'm best in class, no doubt at all. Watch me rise now.